Hi, alerting and email notification. In this video, we're going to take a look at sending alerts via the Slack API, as well as sending alerts via email once we've detected some anomalies within the network. I think in the future, we might be able to do more and more automation, but at this point, I still don't trust the computer to do things on my behalf. So most of the time, and I think I speak true for a lot of us network engineers, is that when there's a significant deviation from the norm, we just want to be notified, and we still want a human intervention to be able to look at it. And whichever tools that it's closest related to our needs, then we'll use. So I'm just picking two applications. One, Slack is a very popular chat app, and you could also use Twitter, and you could also use some other tools that maybe some kind of office communication tool, maybe Skype or whatnot that you guys use. But I'm going to use Slack as an example, and I'm going to use something that's pretty much built into the Python standard library as email. So let's take a little bit of an overview on what we're trying to do. So typically the communication platform has a Python client that abstracts the details, and that is true for Slack as well as Twitter. At least those two are true. And I know Facebook, although I'm not sure how many people actually use Facebook for business purposes. And the authentication for these apps is actually done via an API token. And that could be just a straight up token like we're going to see from Slack, or it could be like an application that you need to develop, or you need to just tell Twitter that you're constructing and then derive the API from there. But in this case, we're just going to keep it simple, and we're going to use a straight API token directly assigned from the platform. And Python has a built-in support for email, so we're basically just going to import those modules and construct an email message that way. And one thing I want to point out is that the sensitive information, such as your username, your password, and account token, just as important as your password. So treat those with your utmost sensitivity and do not keep them in the code. In our scenario, we're just going to paste them in the environmental variable. So that will live in memory, and it will be retrieved at the time of code execution. And there's several advantages of not having that live in the code. One is basically just better security posture. And second is that if you accidentally check in your code without sanitizing it through the GitHub, or in this day of age or open source, that you will actually have a little bit more protection against that kind of careless actions. So let's take a look at the demonstration for both the Slack API as well as sending email notification. So let's take a look at the Slack API first. So they're calling this token generation as the legacy tokens because they're moving toward more of a Twitter model where you create a Slack app and you assign a token to the app. But this legacy tokens is a little more straightforward because you just have to log into your workspace right here, as you could see, that you log into your workspace and you automatically has a button to generate your token, and that could be used later on. So it's a little more straightforward. The Slack app, it takes a little more steps, but the basic concept is the same. So we're going to use the legacy token as an example first. And once you get the token, you could take a look at the open source Slack API, the Python client. And if you scroll down to the installation, you could see the installation is very simple. It's just basically through pip, and the basic usage, it's just maybe 5 or 6 lines of actual code, and you basically get the environmental variable from your Slack API, and then you constructed an API call toward your channel. And because the token's already associated with your workspace, so they really know which workspace that is, you just have to specify the channel. And so let's take a look at the code. So as you can see, the Slack code is just the same as what we have seen on the demonstration. And the Slack API token is being the OS environment. We're just going to paste into the random channel, and it will just say, hey, hello from Slack client. And the way that you could put in if you're not familiar with how to export the environmental variable, basically you just come into here and say export, Slack API token, that's your key. And then the token is obviously you need to, input your actual token. And I have right here is a fake token. So if we just execute it, you won't get anything back, but I will go ahead and show you what you will see on the workspace. And as you can see right here, this is basically what you will see on your workspace. Basically, you have your random channel, and your Slack API testers would just, paste your message. So as you could tell, this is very straightforward, just a few lines of code that you could integrate into, either construct it as a different function, different module, or you could just basically embed in your API call that when you're doing it periodically, and when For example, if you're expecting a interface to be assigned to a certain VLAN, and now when you call that API and you discover that it's in a different VLAN, maybe your colleague or somebody else have mistakenly assigned it to a different VLAN, then you want to be notified. And if you happen to use Slack, then this is a great way to be notified and say, hey, somebody just assigned to a VLAN, maybe it's on purpose, maybe it's not, but anyway, you want to be notified of that. So let's take a look at email notification next. So for email notification, obviously you need a email server to relay that email out. If you're in an enterprise that allows for you to use your SMTP server, then of course you want to use that. Or, if you don't, you could use a free Google email where you use username and password to authenticate and relay that out. For me, I'm going to use the Amazon Simple Email Service. They offer a free tier. I believe, by the time you see this, it might be different. So check if the free tier still exists. But even as a paid tier, I believe it's something like 1,000 emails for 10 cents at the time of the recording. So it's pretty efficient and economical, and it's a commercial grade email server. I'm always, worried about free stuff like Google email that will go away, although it's not likely. But at least, for AWS, it's a paid service, and, just that's what I'm going to use. So keep that in mind, and the structure is basically the same. You want to still use, you will get an email server that you will enter into your environmental variable. You'll get a username and you get a password for you to, again, those are sensitive information, so treat that as such and use the os.env to grab those information from. So let's take a look at the code. So the code is also very straightforward since lots of people use email service and need it. So Python basically has all these modules that's already came in the standard library. And these are just very simple structure that you're able to send the information to and from. And so one thing that is needs to take extra precaution is nowadays we should use TLS to encrypt our email message. So you want to make sure your email server that do that. And for at least the Amazon email server, to avoid spam, you actually have to verify your sender email in advance of the time before you could send it. So keep those two in mind, and let's execute this code. And you will go ahead and execute that code, and let's take a look at the output that you will get. So this is the very simple, this is to notify you of something, and that's the email output that you will get. In summary, in this video, we looked at how to use a alert function for your Slack application or your Slack chat channel, and use that as an example using the Slack API Python client. And we also saw how to send alerts via email. So once again, in section 3, we actually look at several different aspects of monitoring your network using Python. So first, we look at detecting network changes automatically via API call, SNMP polls. We also look at using log file management using Python, various aspects of logs. We also look at integrating Python, how to use Python in an established monitoring framework such as Cacti. And we also use Python to decode the NetFlow v5 and SFlow packets. And lastly, in this section, we saw how to send alerts via Slack and email using Python. So in the next section, we're going to talk about verify your network and testing and secure your network with Python. I will see you there.